but now it's our time to shine as a city. Thank you.
Mr. Coulthard, perhaps you didn't hear the rules earlier. We would appreciate it if you stick to your issues and your agenda and not use this time to Bob, you're ready.
Thank you. But I do want to thank Susanna, I want to thank Paul, and I want to thank Willie. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today. And the issue, you know what I hope out of this mayoral election? That one good idea from all these candidates who are selected and sworn in May can bring forward and move this city forward. You know, I heard from one of the other candidates just now about what was done. I had the most diverse ward in the city of Chicago. But what did I do? I closed the food desert. I found ways to do that. I brought affordable housing using tax credits. And you know, we need development without displacement. And that's what's the key right now. And we see that no matter what. We need to create tax-free zones in our city so businesses can thrive in those economically deprived areas. You know, whether we're talking about whatever street we're talking about on the south and west sides. And I would hope that all the candidates go back, door to door in those neighborhoods. I gotta tell you, we could talk about schools, we could talk about development, but it's all, and crime, it's all related. And we must work together, and I think we can. One good idea, one Chicago. That's what we need. Thank you, everybody.
And thank you to the candidates and to you for respecting our time and following the rules. Looking forward to the rest of the conversation. The second question for all of you is, how will you achieve an inclusive economic climate in Chicago that improves opportunities for all? What are your specific ideas to boost employment, support low-wealth small business owners and entrepreneurs at scale, and ensure more effective capital development? We're going to start this round with Susanna Mendoza.
Thank you, Laura. I want to just get straight to the point. I'm going to expand Neighborhood Opportunity Fund to invest funds paid by developers. They put development funds into this fund so that while they're building downtown, we can access those resources to support job creation on the west and the south side of the city of Chicago, which is where we really need to invest. Now, in 2017, the city issued a policy that encouraged planning developments to hire minority and women contractors, get people to work. I'm going to make that law and expand the scope of it to have requirements that will include returning citizens or participants back into society with groups like READY or the Safer Foundation, which do amazing work that has a great return on investment and most importantly, inspires hope and self-sufficiency. I'll also support our small businesses by expanding their access to capital, and we're going to double down on manufacturing growth zones as well as leverage the opportunity zone tax credits to bring investment to those most disadvantaged and underserved communities. And I'm also going to try to streamline the permitting and the licensing process, because if you are a business, especially a small business or a tech and emerging industry business here in the city of Chicago, it is really almost next to impossible to have a smooth go at permits and licensing. I want to make sure that we're going to, the best decisions are going to be based on what's best for economic growth and not what's best for the local alderman.
Willie Wilson.
In order to bring equity to all community, we got to take and put trade in our grade schools all the way up to college. Oftentimes it's not good enough to just have a good college or high school education. You need trade to go with it. Secondly is that we need to make sure that the dollars be related into its community by creating a grant to help put an infrastructure together to help those communities and don't leave them out of the community. If you create an infrastructure by grant to say we're going to train our people of the disadvantaged community, then we begin to start somewhere. If the city gave you $1 billion today in certain community, we could not handle it. But they can take and put grant and begin to create it. Once you become able to do that, then you begin to give them contracts. That is what's going to take to do it. We have to be serious about our people. We have to make sure that all community benefit from its tax dollars, the tip dollars, and all the proceeds that are fair to all of Chicago, not just a certain one.
Gary McCarthy.
So you've heard a lot of words since I think I already answered part of this question. This question is very similar to the first one in my mind, and it starts with the recognition of the inequities that have historically existed here in Chicago. And I already talked a little bit about the community schools, trade schools, and giving people tax credits, small businesses, startups, and that includes technology, to go to the neighborhoods where we're creating these newly trained workforces. But with it, there's a number of other things that we have to do. With those inequities, we just voted out a Cook County assessor who we know was disproportionately taxing people of color. And at the end of the day, I want you to think about the fact that 31% of our property taxes goes towards TIF funding, which means right now the city is in possession of 31% of that money that it knows that it shouldn't have. That money needs to be returned to the people who deserve it, who owned it in the first place. The second thing that we need to do is we need to create a municipal bank that is from the community, for the community, which will give us low interest loans in those neighborhoods to help with economic development all at the same time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go back to the beginning. It starts with the recognition of the social economic divide that exists in this country and changing the culture that has existed here for decades.
Bill Daley.
Thank you. Economic inclusion, I'm very proud of what I've done in the private sector and in government. When I was chairman of the finance committee of the Chicago Community Trust, the trustee banks had 0 diverse managers. 0. I'd been in the banking business. I knew what a terrible situation it was. I set a goal of 20%. Within 5 months, they were there. When I was Commerce Secretary under Bill Clinton, 40% of the contracts out of the Department of Commerce were to minority and women-owned businesses. So I'm proud of the record I've had. Economic growth, there are estimated 500,000 jobs in our region. There are 60 to 100,000 people on the south and west side. We may have a transportation problem. All of those people who promise you that they're going to bring jobs to every community. The truth is, the most important thing we could do for inclusion is have people ready for the jobs wherever they are in our city. That is the key to it, because we cannot force private sector to go to different neighborhoods. We have to, with capital investment, provide the opportunity for them, but the fact is we've got to get our people ready wherever these jobs are throughout the city and our region. Thank you.
Just a note to the candidates, we're going to go a little bit off the originally planned rotation so that we can get the 2 new candidates in. So now we're going to go to Bob Fioretti and then to Dorothy Brown.
Thank you. When we talk about economic growth and the inequality, a lot of it has all happened in the last few years off of this thing. You develop an app today and you're a multi-millionaire tomorrow. You know, what are we doing? And how do we create that technology in our schools? What do we need to do? I'm glad that the candidates have now jumped on board about moratoriums on school closings. Don't forget, I was out there from day one. I was awarded the Defender of Public Education by CTU because of what I stood for when they were closing those schools. We need technology in our schools. We need STEAM, yes, we need science, technology, you know, and develop it, but we need arts and people to understand. But we need tax-free zones. We need the ability to have affordable housing. And I came out with a very affordable housing program before. You know, and one thing I did, I brought 8,000 jobs to my ward, and half of them, more than half, went to people within the community with community benefits agreements so people could have jobs. I had the most diverse ward. My ward, when I was elected, was 76% African American. And I was the first person since 1915 that was not African American. And I brought jobs. I fulfilled the commitment. I'll do that just like I did on the west side. I'll continue doing it on the west side, but doing it on the south side also. Thank you.
Dorothy Brown.
Thank you. So this is about economic development. And I was on the west side of the city of Chicago this past Saturday at 5624 West on Chicago Avenue. And I did a pop-up town hall meeting, and I walked out on the street, and at least 4 stores were vacant. Parts of Chicago are actually flourishing, and parts of Chicago really are suffering. It's a tale of 2 cities. but it's about equity, justice, and fairness. I have actually issued a community and economic development plan that has specifics in it. I'm calling for getting rid of the ward-level approach to economic development, because just because you're elected alderman does not make you an economic development expert. And I'm going to have 8 planning districts where I will have my experts put together the skeleton of an economic development plan, and then get the community, including the elected officials, to then actually put the meat on that plan, and then we'll attract developers to actually implement that plan using the TIF funds in the neighborhoods that have been neglected the most already, and then we'll also use federal opportunity zone funds. In my economic development plan, I have prioritized those neighborhoods that have been neglected the most. I have an urban policy plan. I talk about the returning citizens and make sure that they have jobs. I also talk about, thank you.
Thank you. Paul Vallis.
Okay, well, specifics again. We've got to get capital into the community, and that means we've got to do community-based economic development by giving them billions of dollars of investments through opportunity zones, tax refinancing, developer fees, and the Amazon tax credits, which are still on the books for other businesses. Second, city contracts. I pulled $3 billion of construction